So I'll give you the background on this. You remember when you were in school, you would read To Kill a Mockingbird. It was assigned sometimes in 8th grade, sometimes later on. Well, the book has been kicked around numerous times because school districts around the United States say, oh, it's too upsetting for the kids because the number of times, I think it's like 7 times or something, the N-word is used in there. So calls to ban the book have been successful in many states. Same thing with Huckleberry Finn, Mice and Men, books like that. Can't be read in class or assigned in class because it's, again, too upsetting. So I looked to see how many times teachers have lost their jobs. They've been suspended. I counted about 7. The last one I could find was in British Columbia. A teacher read or assigned the book, and then he had to go before the powers that be, and they warned him. I don't know if they suspended him. He had been teaching English for 14 years, and he said, this is an important book. It's a wonderful book. It tells the story of what life was like there. And in the 1930s, and could a black man get a fair trial? The answer, of course, was no. I don't want to ruin it for anybody that actually still going to read the book, but the all-white jury, I think, recesses for about 2.5 hours and comes back. It was pretty obvious after Atticus Finch was able to cross-examine. It was clearly the guy was not guilty of raping that young girl, but it didn't matter. So that's the story of To Kill a Mockingbird. So when he's actually, let's get him on the phone. Oh, there you are. Matthew, how are you?
I'm great, Joe.
Good.
How's it going?
Good. Buenos días.
Buenos días. ¿Cómo estás?
Mi madre trabaja en la biblioteca. That's all I remember.
Nice. Well, you sound like you could probably just put yourself in Mexico and nobody would know that you're American.
Well, you're on not necessarily to go over my great Spanish and where my mother or where my father works in the library or in the escuela or the hospital. You're on because we saw the story that came up. You are a Spanish teacher. You were in class, and you overheard some of the kids in class talking about the fact that they had been, I think they were assigned To Kill a Mockingbird, and they were told by others, and you're in the room, I guess they're doing work, and you've assigned them some Spanish work, so you hear them chatting, and one kid might have said something like, well, we're told to, like, when we get to that word, to, like, skip the word or not, not comprehend the word or something. I forget how they were told to sort of avoid the word. And you decided to engage in conversation with them. What happened next?
Yeah, I pretty much just went exactly like you said. I expressed my disagreement with having to skip over words, especially words that prevent it. Like, there's a conversation there. We can confront history, even if it's difficult. And we're supposed to be helping kids learn how to think about the world and how to think critically. And we do them a disservice when we just tell them to skip over the word. And so I expressed that, and a girl asked me, she's like, wait, so if you were reading the book, you would read the word? And I said, yes. If I were reading from the book, I would read every single word. And at that point, it captured the attention of a few other classmates. And one boy, one of my favorite students, by the way, he whipped out the book, had it exactly on the right page, and he said, okay, then do it. And he put the book right in my hands. And I was in a do or die sort of situation. I felt like I was at the point of no return.
Right. And Matthew, just to sort of elongate part of the explanation, you gave, a profound, I think, defense for the fact that, yes, I would. And then I'm sure in your head you're thinking, I can't be a hypocrite. I said I would read it. It's important to stand up for the word that you speak to these kids, because if they don't, if you start to back up a little bit, they start to question your character, right?
Absolutely. And I mean, these students will not learn from somebody who they believe is a coward or a hypocrite. And that was the last thing I wanted to display for them, was hypocrisy or cowardice. And I prefaced by saying, look, how many times do you hear me cuss? Have you ever heard me cuss? How many times have you heard me drop F-bombs? All right, well, for the same reason, you're never going to hear me say this word. But in the context of a book, we cannot censor it. And so, yeah, I read the passage and I tried to make it a teaching moment about context, about history, about how intent matters, and it undermines the author's intent when we don't use historically accurate language. And, you're not a racist if you read a book. It doesn't matter if you're white, black, or Asian. You can read this book and engage with it honestly and not feel like, ooh, someone's going to call me a racist if I read To Kill a Mockingbird.
One of the kids surreptitiously had an audio recording of you reading it.
Yes, and there's actually a video as well, but you can't really see my face. You can just see my feet.
Okay. So here's the question. Do you think you were set up?
It's hard to say. I really don't think that the girl who filmed, I don't think she intended any harm. Kids in high schools these days, they so desperately just want to fit in, and they all have their phones, they're all on Snapchat, they're all on TikTok, and they want to be the one who has the juicy moment. They want to be the one who shares the juicy little bit with their friends, and they get some sort of validation out of that. And so, this is a great lesson that maybe you need to think 2 or 3 steps beyond what you're doing, because I don't think she thought it would end up in this type of situation. And I really don't think she meant any harm. I think she was trying to be funny, because let's be real, like none of my students lost any sleep over this.
Mm-hmm.
Anybody who's pretending that they are super offended, it's just optics. The kids don't care. I hear what type of music they listen to. I hear how they speak out in the hallways, and, but we have to teach them how to think correctly about the world. And so, yeah, I don't think she meant it to be harmful.
And what was the harm?
Well, so right now I received a verbal reprimand, and a couple days later I was informed that my contract would not be renewed.
I read the stuff. You can obviously see that a lawyer wrote it, basically saying you violated this or violated that. We're not going to get into the weeds on the violation stuff, because even you were able to write back saying, this is what you're accusing me of violating. I didn't violate it. So they're not going to renew your contract, and they're not renewing it because of you reading from To Kill a Mockingbird, saying the word that we're not allowed to say.
That's where it gets a little different. So in the state of Washington, I'm a provisional status teacher. That means I have less than 3 years of experience in the district that I'm at. And when you're on a provisional status, a district can let you go for no cause.
Okay.
Right. And so they are saying that it's due to parent concerns and poor judgment, because they know that they can't say, we're letting you go because you read from To Kill a Mockingbird. That is my opinion,
mm-hmm.
because prior to the To Kill a Mockingbird incident, I've never had a single disciplinary action. I've never had a single documented parent phone call. When I ask what else is contributing to your decision here, they can't give me anything. And the superintendent even said that he was relying on hearsay, because he's like, oh, it's just informal conversations and we don't really think you're a good fit here. But I mean, come on, like 2 or 3 days after this happened is like, that was just when the snowball started rolling up. And we all know the real reason here.
Yeah.
And it's a pretextual justification that they're making. They want to get rid of me because of this, and they can't come out and say that because it would be a violation of my First Amendment.
Right. Well, a violation of First Amendment, under the rules, because you're working. Well, it's a public school, right? Yeah. So I don't know, get into a gray area, but I also think they look at liability. They're like, look, the guy did it once. We warned him, and then if you read from it again or whatever, then you could have some teacher or some parent come forward and say, my son is suffering, my daughter is suffering from, PTSD or whatever. She's having some sort of physical reaction to what happened because she heard that word. And then the school district is, have to go to court And they're going to say, well, did the guy, did he read it one other time? He did. So then the liability falls back on them. They're just covering their ass. This is basically what they're trying to do. They see you as a liability, not as you as a person or a teacher or someone that has dedicated their life or loves teaching. They just see you as possibly a risk that you could do something else, and therefore they could, find themselves vulnerable to a lawsuit. That's my take.
They might look at me like, hey, this guy's going to be a loose cannon, especially if we let him get tenure next year, and we don't know what he's going to say, because the thing is it's not really about me. It's really about the public school system as an institution. It punishes truth-telling. It punishes teachers who actually tell the truth to their kids, because that truth is inconvenient to a lot of these progressive ideologies. If I told the kids, hey, there's only 2 genders, that could get you fired. If you said something about obesity being unhealthy, which is plainly obvious, right? Like if you said that, you could get in really big trouble. And that's the big problem here. And there's probably teachers all around the country who are finding themselves in similar circumstances.
So you're at a crossroads in your career. Do you decide, well, you know what, go along, get along, I just won't do it. I won't say things. I won't say the truth, because the truth actually won't set you free. It'll set you free to go onto the unemployment line. So what do you do?
It's different in every situation, obviously. And I think teachers should use tact in how they do this, because maybe they just remain quiet and they live to fight another day and, lose the battle, win the war type of thing. But, I've had other circumstances where I have chosen to remain quiet, and I've regretted it. I can remember one instance where I had a student 2 years ago. He was a boy, and he wanted to be called by a girl's name. And one day he called me out into the hallway to speak with him, and he was crying, saying he felt like he was going to harm himself. And I am just distraught over the situation. I was like, this boy needs to know the truth, because he's chosen to believe a lie, and people around him have affirmed that lie, and it's just created a mental instability. Like, this kid has no solid foundation to stand on. But I was worried about losing my job in that moment. And so I gave him a pass to go down and speak to the counselor, because that's the right thing to do. Even though telling him the truth that, no, you are a boy, and as soon as you stop fighting against that you are fearfully and wonderfully made the way you are, and there's a lot of empowerment in that, and maybe you'll find a little bit of rest in that. But I was frightened, and so I sent him down to the counselors, and he spoke to the counselors, and I never saw him again. He transferred out the very next day. So situations like that pop up every now and then.
Mm-hmm. Well, unfortunately, it is a bit still of an uphill climb for people like yourself. Here's the good news to come from this. There's a petition that's been started to try to get you back into that job. I'm sure that once this story goes national as quickly as it will, you will continue you'll get support from nonprofits that might help you if this thing needs to go to court, or you'll get offers from other schools that would like a teacher to challenge their kids to learn. And to think for themselves, not to follow an ideology that can sometimes be so anti-intellectual. Matthew, I appreciate your courage and coming on the radio.
Hey, it's my pleasure. Thank you for having me. And it's not really my courage. It's a lot of the students who are mobilizing right now. There's a lot of criticisms out there for this generation, but I'm learning not to underestimate their moral courage when things hit the fan.
We'll leave that as a final word. Thank you, Matthew. Appreciate it.
Thank you.